Hey guys, tonight we're going to dive into a different kind of history. A story not of glorious battles or grand political schemes, but of a quiet, crushing terror that seeps into the walls of a palace and, more importantly, into the mind of a monarch. This isn't about the grand sweep of events you read in textbooks, but about the brutal, relentless psychological toll of being a ruler, the person everyone looks to for answers when a silent, invisible killer stalks the land. Imagine yourself in a world without modern medicine, without the internet to reassure you or terrify you with endless news cycles. You are the center of a vast, complex machine of state, a living symbol of power and order. Now, picture that machine grinding to a halt, not because of a rival army, but because of a microscopic enemy no one can even see. The fear isn't just for your own life, but for the very stability of the realm you are sworn to protect. It's a pressure that would shatter most of us. You probably wouldn't survive it, to be honest. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. We've got a long, quiet night ahead of us. And for everyone listening, wherever you are in the world, feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your morning begins as it always does, a ritual as unyielding as the stone walls of the castle. The crisp linen sheets are pulled back by a servant who moves with the practiced efficiency of a shadow. You are not a person who wakes up, but a monarch who is revealed. The light that filters through the tall, arched windows of your bedchamber is the same light that will soon fall upon the faces of your courtiers. Waiting in a long line to catch a glimpse of you, you feel their expectations before you even open your eyes. A weight pressing down on your chest. You are the heartbeat of the kingdom, and your every breath is a matter of state. Today, however, the air feels different. There's a subtle chill that has nothing to do with the weather. As your personal valet helps you into your stiff, heavy garments each layer another shield between you and the outside world, you catch the whisper of a new kind of gossip. Not about a new mistress or a foreign dignitary, but about a strange fever gripping the port city. At first, it's just another piece of news, one of many a monarch must sift through. Your mind is already occupied with more pressing matters: a minor rebellion on the southern border, the ongoing negotiations for a trade treaty, and the tedious, endless dance of courtly politics. You dismiss it as a momentary inconvenience, a fleeting sickness that will pass with the changing season. You move through your day, a meticulously choreographed performance, the grand audience, where supplicants and officials kneel before you, the council meeting, where you listen to the droning reports of your ministers, the state dinner, where you must smile and make small talk, your every gesture and word scrutinized for meaning. But even as you fulfill these duties, the whisper follows you, growing louder. Your Minister of Finance, a man whose mind is a ledger book, mentions the fever is slowing trade. The Minister of War, a grizzled veteran, reports that it's hitting the garrison in the city, weakening your defenses. You listen, you nod, but the gravity of it hasn't truly set in. It's a distant problem, like a storm brewing on the far horizon. You are, after all, the monarch, and you are insulated from such things. You believe you are, but the isolation is a lie you tell yourself. The truth is, the higher you are, the more exposed you become. The news that reaches your ears is filtered, censored, and sanitized. Yet, the fear is a poison that can't be strained out. It's in the nervous way a page hands you a goblet, their eyes darting away from yours. It's in the hushed conversations that fall silent the moment you enter a room. You begin to notice the small things. A courtier absent from their usual place, their family offering a vague excuse of an indisposition, the physician you see every morning for a quick check. His hands now trembling slightly as he takes your pulse. You look into his eyes and see not just concern for your health, but a profound, unspoken terror. He knows something you don't, or at least, something you haven't allowed yourself to fully acknowledge. Your sleep becomes fitful. The comfortable silence of your bedchamber, once a sanctuary, now feels like a tomb. You dream of faceless crowds, their hands reaching for you, their voices a cacophony of pleas and accusations. You wake up in a cold sweat, the heavy velvet curtains of your four-poster bed seeming to trap the stale air. The dreams are so vivid you can almost smell the sickness. The decay? You are the monarch, but in these moments, you are just a man or woman, vulnerable and alone. You remember a lesson from your tutors about a previous plague centuries ago, and a king who fled his capital, only to lose the respect of his people and the loyalty of his court. You think to yourself, you cannot flee. The very idea is a betrayal of your duty, a profound act of cowardice, but you must be here, on the throne, a symbol of strength and stability. Even if you feel anything but a historical fact that you find yourself mulling over is the widespread belief in miasma theory. The idea that diseases were caused by bad air, it was the prevailing scientific thought for centuries. You can almost see your own physicians trying to combat this invisible enemy by burning fragrant herbs and incense, believing that the pleasant smells would purify the air and ward off the sickness. It was a beautiful lie, a way of imposing order on a chaotic, terrifying situation. You remember the detail about a past plague where people carried small bouquets of flowers, not just to mask the smell of the dead, but because they genuinely thought the scent of the blossoms would protect them. The elegance of the superstition is almost heartbreaking. You call for your head physician, a man named Ilara, a woman with a mind as sharp as a scalpel. She is pragmatic, more interested in observable facts than old wives' tales. When she enters your private study, you can see the exhaustion in her eyes. She is not just your physician. She has been serving on the front lines of the hospitals. A silent hero. She doesn't mince words. Your Majesty, it is not a fever. It is a pestilence. The same one that has swept through the East for generations. We have reports of cases from every major city now, and the death toll is rising exponentially. It is in the capital. It is in this very city. The words hit you like a physical blow. It's no longer a distant problem. It's here. In your home. In your kingdom. Ilara continues, her voice low and grave. She presents you with grim statistics. A cold, hard truth that no amount of prayer or incense can hide. You listen. Your hands gripping the arms of your chair so tightly your knuckles turn white. You are told of the symptoms. The speed of its spread. The terrible swiftness with which it claims its victims. You hear of the families wiped out in a single week, the streets becoming eerily quiet, the normal rhythm of life shattered. A strange historical detail she mentions is that some people believed the disease was spread by rats, and for this reason, they would put out food for cats, thinking it was the cats who were killing the carriers of the disease. Of course, this was a logical step to take when looking at the problem, and while not completely wrong, it was a very limited understanding of the disease and of its true nature. The belief, however, did little to stop the spread. This is where the psychological burden truly begins. It's one thing to be a ruler in times of peace, to make decisions about taxes or treaties. It's another to be a ruler in times of terror, to be the one who must make decisions that will literally mean life or death for your people. With no clear right or wrong answer, you feel the crushing weight of it all descend upon you. What do? Do you close the city gates, trapping the sick inside? Do you risk further rebellion by imposing strict quarantines? Do you rely on the questionable advice of your superstitious clergy? or the grim statistics of your physician? The academics are debating this very question even today. Historians still debate whether monarchs who imposed strict quarantines during plagues were seen as tyrants who abandoned their people, or as strong leaders who did what was necessary for the greater good. You wonder, what would they say about you? Would they see the fear in your heart, or just the decisions you make? You are now a prisoner of your own power. You are not a regular person who can flee to the countryside with your family. You are the symbol of the state, and the state must not be seen to falter. Your mind races. Your thoughts a tangled mess of conflicting counsel. You remember the words of your father, the late monarch, on his deathbed. The crown is not a gift. My child, he had said, his voice a frail whisper. It is a burden, and it is in the darkest hours that you will truly learn its weight. You had thought you understood him then. You had thought the weight was the endless paperwork and the difficult decisions. You realize now how naive you were. The true weight is this, the crushing loneliness of being the only one in the room who can't afford to panic. The isolation of being the person whose fear must be hidden. Because if the monarch is afraid, what hope is there for the kingdom? You order your scribes to begin drafting royal decrees. One to shut down all public gatherings, another to establish a new council to manage the crisis. You sign the documents with a trembling hand, the ink a dark, permanent stain on the parchment. With each stroke of the quill, you feel a piece of your former self slipping away. The world you knew, the world of predictability and order, is gone. In its place is a terrifying new reality, a world where the air itself is an enemy, and the most dangerous person is the one you cannot see. The reign you had so carefully planned, the legacy you had hoped to build, is now a ship tossed about on a stormy sea. With you, the monarch, at the helm. But with no control over the winds or the waves, your journey has just begun. And you know, deep in your gut, that it will not be an easy one. You feel the first stirrings of a new kind of madness, the slow motion unraveling of a mind under siege, and it's only just the beginning. The whispers, which began as a distant murmur, have now become a deafening roar. The strange fever is no longer a matter of distant port cities. It is a ghost haunting every alleyway, a shadow in every home. You, the monarch, are at the center of a storm of conflicting information and desperate counsel. Your court, once a bastion of decorum and order, has become a microcosm of the fear gripping the kingdom. You find yourself trapped in a web of contradictory advice, a situation that is psychologically taxing in a way you could never have imagined. On one side, you have your traditional advisors, the men and women of the old guard. They are pragmatists, steeped in the wisdom of centuries of rule. They speak of quarantines, of closing the city gates, and of the need for decisive, if brutal, action to contain the spread. They tell you that a few thousand deaths now are preferable to the collapse of the entire kingdom. Their counsel is cold, clinical, and logical. We must protect the realm, they say. Their voice is devoid of emotion. Their words are a comfort in a way, because they offer a clear path forward. A grim but understandable strategy. You listen to them, and a part of you agrees. This is the way it has always been done. This is the logic of power. On the other side, you have the clergy, your head priest, a man whose faith is as unshakable as the castle's foundations. Argues that this is a divine punishment. He insists on public prayers, on processions, and on a renewed focus on piety and repentance. He speaks of a vengeful God and of the need to earn divine forgiveness through acts of contrition. He believes that the plague is not a physical malady but a spiritual one, a test of faith for the entire kingdom. He begs you to sanction these large gatherings, arguing that the faith of the people is the only true shield against the pestilence. His voice is passionate, his eyes filled with a fervent belief that is both inspiring and terrifying. You hear him out, and another part of you wonders if he is right. What if this is a punishment? What if all your earthly preparations are futile against the wrath of the heavens? The thought sends a shiver down your spine. Then there is your physician, the pragmatic and ever-observant Ilara. She presents a third path, one based on a new and unnerving understanding of the disease. She tells you of the need for cleanliness, for isolating the sick from the healthy, and of a strange, new theory that the disease is not spread by bad air, but by direct contact. This idea seems absurd to your other advisors. How can a disease be passed from one person to another without any visible sign? It's a concept that is difficult to grasp, and it flies in the face of centuries of accepted knowledge. Her counsel is practical but also radical, requiring a fundamental shift in how your kingdom operates. She suggests closing down markets, shutting down public baths, and even discouraging the traditional handshake. Her ideas are met with suspicion and outright scorn from the other council members, who see her as a dangerous radical. You find yourself caught between their old-world wisdom and her new-world practicality, a truly agonizing position for any ruler to be in. The pressure is immense. Each advisor is pulling you in a different direction, each one convinced their path is the only one. You are the final arbiter, the one who must sift through the conflicting advice and choose a course of action. This is the true psychological toll of being a monarch in a crisis, the loneliness of a decision. No matter what you choose, you will be seen as wrong by a significant portion of your court and your people. If you side with the pragmatists and impose brutal quarantines, you will be accused of tyranny and a lack of compassion. If you side with the clergy, you will be seen as a fool who gambles the lives of your people on prayer alone. If you side with Ilara, you risk your court losing faith in your judgment, and your people might not understand or follow her strange new protocols. The stress begins to manifest in strange ways. You find yourself unable to concentrate. During a council meeting, your mind drifts, replaying the grim statistics Ilara gave you. You can almost see the faces of the sick, the terror in their eyes, the helplessness of their families. You feel a profound sense of powerlessness, a feeling alien to you. You are the monarch, the most powerful person in the realm, and yet you are helpless against a microscopic enemy. The irony is not lost on you. You try to remember the teachings of your tutors, the stories of great monarchs who faced plagues and emerged victorious. But those stories are just that, stories. They are sanitized, romanticized tales of brave leaders. They don't mention the sleepless nights, the gnawing anxiety, the slow-motion descent into madness. You remember an odd historical detail, something you learned as a child. A common belief during certain plagues was that people with certain physical deformities or ailments were immune. The belief was so widespread that some families would even pay to have their children disfigured, believing it would protect them from the sickness. It was a macabre and desperate gamble, born of a kind of hope that seems both pathetic and profoundly human now. You recall thinking, even as a child, how brutal a psychological toll that would be on a parent. To willingly inflict harm on their child out of fear. Now, as you sit on your throne, you feel a kinship with that desperation. You would do anything to protect your people, to see an end to this terror, but you have no such terrible options, only bad ones. The palace itself begins to change. The once bustling hallways are now eerily quiet. Courtiers, who once jostled for position and your attention, now keep a respectful, and more importantly, a fearful distance. They wear scarves over their mouths and noses, an attempt to ward off the bad air, a pathetic but universal gesture of fear. The masked faces are a constant, unsettling reminder of the danger. You feel the isolation growing, the physical distance reflecting the emotional one. You are alone, truly alone, on your throne. The men and women who were once your closest advisors now seem like strangers, their faces half hidden, their voices muffled by the fabric over their mouths. One day, you snap. During a council meeting, after a long and fruitless debate about the best course of action, you slam your fist on the table. The noise echoes through the silent chamber, startling everyone. "Enough!" you yell, your voice raw with frustration. You speak to me of prayers, of ancient remedies, of numbers and ledgers, but you do not speak of my people. You do not speak of the fear in their eyes, the wailing of the sick, the smell of death that now hangs over my capital. You talk as if they were pawns on a chessboard, not living, breathing souls. The outburst is uncharacteristic, and it silences the room completely. Your advisors stare at you, not with fear or anger, but with a kind of pity that you find unbearable. They see a monarch unraveling, a ruler succumbing to the pressure. This is another layer of the psychological toll, the knowledge that your own vulnerability is now a weakness for all to see. This crisis has brought to the forefront a long-standing academic debate. Historians still debate whether a monarch's public display of emotion during a crisis was a sign of a compassionate leader or a sign of a weak and indecisive one. You feel a painful resonance with this. You feel the need to be a stoic, unyielding symbol of strength. But your heart aches for your people. You want to show them you are with them in this suffering. But you also know that any sign of weakness could embolden your enemies and cause your people to lose faith. It's an impossible position. You feel a profound disconnect from your own body. You eat without tasting, sleep without resting. The only thing that feels real is the weight of the crown, the crushing responsibility. You find yourself walking the palace corridors late at night, a single candle in your hand, a solitary figure in a vast, empty castle. You stare out of the high windows, looking down at your city. The lights are fewer now, the streets quieter. You imagine you can hear the faint sounds of weeping, the distant cries of the sick. Carried on the night wind, you feel a sudden, terrifying pang of empathy, a profound sense of shared humanity with the very people you are so desperately trying to protect. You are a king, but you are also a man or woman, a fragile being of flesh and blood. The plague doesn't care about your titles. It doesn't care about your power. It is a great equalizer. And this realization is perhaps the most terrifying psychological blow of all. The palace, once a vibrant hub of life, has become your gilded cage. The whispers and conflicting counsels of the outside world have faded, replaced by an eerie, profound silence. You have retreated into the innermost sanctums of your royal residence. A king or queen now isolated not just by your station, but by a mortal fear of an unseen enemy. This is a new, terrible kind of imprisonment. One that takes a far deeper psychological toll than any dungeon. Your daily routine, once a source of strength and stability, has become a mockery of its former self. The grand audience hall is empty, its polished marble floor reflecting only the ghost of what it once was. The great dining hall, which once roared with the sound of 100 conversations, now feels vast and hollow. Your lone plate of food is sad testament to your solitude. You no longer walk the halls with your head held high, but with a furtive glance around every corner. A constant, low-level anxiety gnawing at the edges of your sanity. The clink of a distant spoon, the soft footfall of a servant, the creak of an old door, every sound is amplified in the silence, each one a potential harbinger of doom. You are trapped in a mausoleum of your own making. The courtiers who remain are a shadow of their former selves. They move with a strange, unnatural grace, their faces half hidden by thick cloths or intricate masks. They keep their distance, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and obedience. You find yourself studying their faces, trying to guess what lies beneath the cloth. Are they healthy? Are they carriers? The paranoia is a slow-acting poison, and it's beginning to corrupt every relationship you have. You start to see every person as a potential source of infection, and this fear transforms every human interaction into an act of profound risk. You find yourself pushing people away, not out of malice, but out of a desperate, panicked need to survive. The hand that once clasped your most trusted advisor's shoulder now recoils from a simple gesture of respect. This is a profound and fundamental loneliness, a state of being that is truly unique to your position. Your subjects are isolated with their families. In their communities, their loneliness is a shared experience, but yours is not. You are the only one who occupies the space you do. You are utterly alone at the top of the pyramid. The weight of the kingdom rests on your shoulders, but there is no one to share the burden with. No one to whom you can confess your darkest fears. You are a king or a queen, and you are terrified, but you cannot show it. This concealment of your true feelings is a form of psychological torture, forcing you to maintain a facade of strength while your insides are screaming in silent agony. An interesting historical detail you remember from your studies is the belief in pestilence bells. In some cities during a plague, a bell would be rung to signify the passing of a cart carrying the dead, a chilling sound that would send people rushing indoors. You find yourself imagining that sound, a constant, low tolling that would have been a grim soundtrack to everyday life. The thought makes you shudder, and you are grateful for the quiet of your palace. But then you realize that the silence is its own kind of bell, a bell of isolation, of fear, and of profound, deafening emptiness. The days and nights begin to blur into one another. You lose track of time, the meticulous rhythm of your royal duties replaced by an aimless, anxious drifting. You find yourself walking the long, silent corridors, your mind replaying the terrible choices you've made and the ones you still have to make. You wonder if you should have listened to Alara more, or if you should have prayed more. As the clergy urged, you second-guess everything, and with no one to offer a counterpoint. Your thoughts spiral into a whirlpool of self-doubt. You remember how you used to handle crises by gathering your best minds, debating the issues, and arriving at a collective decision. Now, you make decisions in a vacuum, a terrifying process that leaves you feeling adrift and hopelessly alone. The windows of your private study, once a source of light and life, are now a barrier. You gaze out at the city below, a world you can no longer touch. You see smoke rising from the chimneys, a comforting sign of life. But you also see the absence of children playing in the streets, the stillness of the market square. You are a ghost, looking down on a kingdom of the living and the dead, a monarch who cannot even walk among his people to offer a word of comfort or a gesture of support. Your power is absolute in theory, but in practice, it is worthless against this enemy. This sense of utter impotence is another layer of the psychological torment. You are the monarch. You are supposed to be able to fix things, but you cannot. You can only hide. This raises a question that historians still debate. Historians still debate whether the monarch's isolation during a plague was a necessary evil for their own safety and the stability of the state, or an unforgivable abandonment of their people in their greatest time of need. The thought plagues you relentlessly. You feel a profound, aching guilt. Are you a coward? Are you a good ruler? Or a self-serving one? You have to believe you're doing this for the good of the kingdom, that your survival is paramount to the stability of the state. But another, darker voice whispers that you're just a frightened person, clinging to the last vestiges of your power while your people suffer and die. The tension between these two thoughts is a constant, exhausting battle in your mind. The isolation begins to manifest in a deep, gnawing weariness. You find it difficult to eat, to sleep, to even breathe. You feel a constant, low-level anxiety that never goes away, a kind of psychological white noise that makes it impossible to find peace. The simple act of sitting down to a meal is a source of tension, as you find yourself scrutinizing the food for any sign of contamination. The softest of touches makes you flinch. You are a monarch whose very existence is a contradiction, a figure of power who feels utterly powerless, a symbol of stability in a world that is spinning out of control. And you are alone, surrounded by the ghosts of a life you once knew and a kingdom that is slowly, inexorably, falling apart. The relentless pressure and profound isolation have become a corrosive force, a slow-acting poison that has begun to warp your perception of reality. The lines between what is real and what is a product of your own anxiety are blurring, creating a waking nightmare from which you cannot escape. The world outside your palace walls is a place of sickness and death, but the world inside your head is becoming an even more terrifying landscape. You find yourself plagued by visions and phantom sensations. You'll be sitting at your desk, signing a decree, and a sudden, sharp pain will lance through your side, a familiar symptom of the plague. You'll drop your quill, your heart pounding in your chest, convinced you have been touched by the pestilence. Now, but after a few moments, the pain subsides, leaving you with nothing but the shaking in your hands and the hollow echo of your fear. You catch yourself holding your breath in crowded rooms, terrified of inhaling a single, microscopic particle that could seal your fate. You start to see shadows in the corners of your eye, thinking they are the ghosts of the sick. The smallest cough from a servant sends you into a state of panic, and you find yourself obsessively checking your own pulse, convinced that every beat is a sign of your impending end. This is the very essence of the psychological toll, the turning of your own mind against you. You are a monarch who is supposed to be the pillar of strength for your kingdom, but you are a person whose mind is slowly, inexorably, betraying you. The anxiety has taken root and is growing, a tangled vine of paranoia that is strangling your reason. You find yourself questioning the loyalty of your own servants. Was that cough a sign of illness, or was it a deliberate act to scare you? Is the food you're eating truly safe, or has it been tainted? The seeds of mistrust are planted in the fertile ground of your own fear, and they are blossoming into a forest of suspicion. You find it difficult to trust anyone, and this self-imposed isolation is a far more brutal kind of loneliness than any physical quarantine could ever be. An historical detail that comes to mind is the bizarre and often desperate remedies people would turn to. A surprisingly common belief during plagues was that placing a live chicken, cut in half, over a bubo, the painful lymph node swelling associated with the plague could draw out the disease. You remember reading about this as a child and thinking how barbaric and foolish it sounded? Now, in the dark hours of the night, you find yourself wondering if it would work, if there is a kernel of truth to the madness. The thought terrifies you, because it shows you how desperately your mind is grasping for any answer. No matter how irrational, to stop the fear, the silence of your palace, once a refuge, is now a source of torment. The emptiness of the halls becomes a canvas for your anxieties. You walk through them at night, the solitary flame of your candle casting long, dancing shadows on the walls, and you can almost hear the whispered conversations of the courtiers who are no longer there. You see their faces in the darkened windows, their mouths moving in silent accusation. You are haunted not by real ghosts, but by the ghosts of your own making, the guilt of your isolation, the fear of your failures, the terror of your own mortality. Your bedchamber, a place of safety, is now a cage, and sleep is a fragile thing, constantly shattered by nightmares of a plague-ridden kingdom and your own slow, painful death. There is a long-standing academic debate about the role of royal paranoia during times of crisis. Historians still debate whether a monarch's heightened suspicion and isolation during a pandemic were a reasonable and necessary survival strategy. or a sign of a crumbling psyche that ultimately weakened their rule? You feel this debate in your very bones. You are trying to be a good monarch, to protect yourself so you can protect the kingdom. But you are also slowly losing your mind. The weight of this contradictory truth is almost too much to bear. You are a king or queen in name, but in your mind, you are a person slowly being devoured by a fear that is more potent and more terrifying than the plague itself. You are alone with your monsters, and they are all in your head. The once grand court, a place of vibrant life and political intrigue, has become a ghostly caricature of itself. The lively chatter, the rustle of silk gowns, the clinking of glasses all have been replaced by a suffocating silence. You are the monarch presiding over a court that is little more than a collection of masked faces and silent hallways. A reflection of the paranoia and despair that have seeped into every corner of your life. Your daily assemblies are now eerie. Stylized rituals. The courtiers who still attend maintain a respectful, and more importantly, a safe distance. Their faces. Once a source of information, a twitch of a lip, a flicker in the eyes, are now completely hidden by thick, embroidered masks. You find yourself speaking to an audience of silent, unblinking specters. The human connection, which was always tenuous but vital to your rule, has been completely severed. You are surrounded by people, yet you are utterly alone. The masks, intended as a defense against the plague, have become a psychological wall between you and the very people you are meant to lead. You start to forget what their faces look like, and they, in turn, become less real to you, transforming into two-dimensional figures in a tableau of fear. This is a profound and demoralizing change. Your power, which once derived from a mixture of divine right and personal charisma, is now just a title. You cannot inspire loyalty with a smile they cannot see. You cannot command respect with a voice that is lost in the emptiness of the chamber. You feel your influence dwindling, not because of a rival or a rebellion, but because the very fabric of human connection has been torn apart. You are a king or queen ruling over an empty stage, performing for a phantom audience. The psychological toll of this is immeasurable. You feel your purpose slipping away, your identity as a leader eroding with each silent, masked assembly. A strange historical detail that you find yourself dwelling on is the idea of plague doctors, these physicians, with their beak-like masks and long leather coats, were a grim but necessary part of life during pandemics. Their outfits were designed to protect them from the bad air, with the beaks often filled with aromatic herbs. You remember seeing an old illustration of one as a child and being fascinated by the bizarre, almost monstrous appearance. Now, you realize that your own court has become a version of this. The masks, the distance, the pervasive sense of dread, they are all part of a costume of fear that everyone is forced to wear. The only difference is that your plague doctors are not here to heal you. They are here to remind you of your powerlessness. You find yourself wandering through the palace gardens, a place you once loved. The carefully manicured hedges and vibrant flowers seem alien to you now. You remember a time when you would walk here with your children, listening to their laughter as they chased butterflies. But now, the silence is broken only by the sound of your own footsteps on the gravel path. You feel like a ghost in your own home, a visitor in a life that once belonged to you. You see a servant in the distance, tending to the roses, their back turned to you. You are tempted to call out, to ask them a simple human question, but you stop yourself. The distance between you is not just physical. It is a chasm of fear and protocol that you feel you can no longer cross. The isolation is complete. This raises a long-standing academic debate that seems to echo your own internal turmoil. Historians still debate whether the ritualization of royal life during a pandemic, like the use of masks and physical distancing, was a necessary act of public health or a symbolic surrender of the monarch's personal authority and humanity. You feel the weight of this debate every day. You have to believe that you are doing what is necessary, that you are protecting your kingdom by staying safe. But a small, persistent voice in your mind whispers that you have already surrendered. You have surrendered your connection to your people, your personal identity, and perhaps a small piece of your soul. You are a monarch, but you have become an icon of fear, a silent, masked figure on a throne of stone, watching your kingdom disappear behind a veil of sickness and dread. The suffocating paralysis of your isolation gives way to a desperate need for action. You cannot stand idly by while your kingdom crumbles. Even if your actions feel futile, you resolve to reassert control, to impose order on the chaos. A desperate gamble to regain a sense of purpose and power. But the reality you face is far more resistant to your will than you could have ever imagined. You issue a series of increasingly severe edicts. You command the people to remain in their homes, to report the sick, and to burn the possessions of the deceased. You increase the patrols of your royal guard, giving them authority to enforce these new laws with a swift and heavy hand. You believe that these harsh measures are a necessary evil, a bitter medicine for a sick kingdom. You tell yourself that this is what a strong monarch would do, that this is the only way to stem the tide of the pestilence. But even as you sign the decrees, you feel the profound sadness of your choices. You are not a father or mother protecting your children. You are a cold, distant authority figure imposing your will on a terrified populace. Your attempts to reassert control are met with a complex and heartbreaking reality. The laws are difficult to enforce. Your guards are also terrified, and many are sick themselves. They are reluctant to enter the homes of the infected, to touch the possessions of the dead. They are not an army fighting an enemy they can see, but a group of frightened men and women fighting against an invisible terror. Their loyalty is stretched thin, their morale low. You hear reports of disobedience, of people fleeing the cities despite your orders, of guards turning a blind eye to violations because they, too, are haunted by the same fear that grips the rest of the kingdom. Your power, which once felt absolute, now feels like a hollow command, an empty gesture. A strange historical detail that you recall is the belief in plague stones or fever stones, which people would place in the hands of the sick. These were often a specific type of stone, believed to have magical or healing properties. The most fascinating part was not the stone itself, but the collective belief that surrounded it. The desperate hope that a simple rock could hold back the tide of death. You realize now that your edicts are your own version of a plague stone, a symbol of hope and control that you are grasping at. Even if you know, deep down, that it may be just as futile. The resistance to your rule is not just passive disobedience, it is also active defiance. Your clergy, who once preached obedience, now whisper of divine judgment against a monarch who has abandoned prayer for brute force. The local magistrates and officials, who once followed your every command, now argue for leniency, fearing that your harsh laws will cause the people to turn against you entirely. You hear whispers that your kingdom is not sick, but cursed, and that your own cold. Distant heart is the source of the plague. The very people you are trying to save are beginning to see you not as their protector, but as their oppressor. This struggle highlights a historical debate that has been raging for centuries. Historians still debate whether a monarch's centralized, top-down response to a pandemic, while perhaps more efficient on paper, was ultimately less effective than a decentralized, community-led response, which had more buy-in from the populace. You feel the profound truth of this debate. You are trying to command from your isolated palace, a position of ultimate authority and absolute powerlessness. You cannot see the suffering, you cannot hear the pleas, and you cannot understand the desperation. You are trying to rule a kingdom from a position of total disconnect, and your efforts are proving to be as futile as a man trying to stop a flood with a single hand. You find yourself sinking into a deep, pervasive weariness. The days are a blur of endless decrees, reports of failure, and the constant, gnawing anxiety of a monarch who is losing control. You are a king or queen in name, but in practice, you are a ghost, a hollow figure issuing commands into a void. Your efforts to reassert power have only highlighted your impotence, and the bitter reality of your limited influence is a psychological blow more devastating than any you have faced before. You are a monarch who has tried to fight a ghost with a sword, and in the process, you have only managed to alienate the very people you sought to save. With your efforts to reassert control failing, you find yourself retreating once more. But this time, you are not just isolated by fear, you are isolated by a new, terrible perspective. From the windows of your palace, you become a silent observer of your own kingdom's suffering and resilience. This vantage point forces you to confront your own privilege and the profound disconnect between your insulated world and the raw, brutal reality of your people's lives. You spend hours at the window of your private study, a silent sentinel watching the world go by. You see the funeral carts? Now a daily sight. Their creaking wheels a grim soundtrack to your days. You see the few brave souls who still venture into the streets, their faces etched with a profound weariness you have only just begun to feel. You see a family huddled together on a street corner, a father wrapping a thin blanket around his shivering child, and for the first time, you feel a sharp pang of empathy that cuts through the fog of your own anxiety. You are the monarch, the living symbol of the state, and you have just witnessed a small, quiet act of profound human love and desperation. You realize that while you have been consumed by the psychological weight of your crown, your people have been consumed by the very real, physical weight of survival. This is the most humbling and devastating psychological blow of all. You are forced to see yourself not as a benevolent protector, but as a distant, almost mythological figure. The suffering you have read about in Alara's reports is no longer just statistics, it is a face, a family, a small act of kindness in the face of absolute despair. You have been living in a world of protocol, of masked courtiers, and of abstract political decisions. They have been living in a world of cold floors, empty cupboards, and the terrifying sound of a loved one's labored breathing. The chasm between your reality and theirs is so vast that you feel like you are looking at another planet. You remember the old belief that a king or queen had a special connection to their people, a shared spiritual bond? That belief now feels like a cruel joke. A strange historical detail you recall from your childhood education is the belief in sin eaters. These were people, often poor, who would be paid to ritually eat a meal over a deceased person's body. The belief being that they would consume the sins of the dead, allowing the deceased to rest in peace. You remember thinking it was a bizarre and sad custom, but now, as you watch your kingdom from afar, you realize that in a way, you are a sin eater of a sort. You are a monarch who is ritually expected to bear the collective burdens and sins of your people, but you have no one to share that burden with. And unlike a sin eater, you are not even allowed the small solace of a meal. You are just alone with the weight of it all. You start to see the resilience of your people as well. You see a small group of women, their faces covered, helping a neighbor carry a heavy bucket of water. You see a solitary musician playing a quiet, mournful tune from a window, a small act of beauty in a world of ugliness. These small moments of humanity, of defiance in the face of despair, fill you with a complex mixture of admiration and guilt. They are the true heroes of this story, the ones who are facing the enemy head-on, and you are the one hiding in a castle, watching from a distance. The realization that your people are stronger and braver than you, their monarch, is a profound and difficult pill to swallow. This is where a long-standing academic debate comes to life for you. Historians still debate whether a monarch's detached, privileged viewpoint during a national crisis was a source of strategic clarity or a fundamental flaw that prevented them from understanding the true needs and struggles of their populace. You feel the profound truth of this debate in your soul. Your detachment has kept you alive. Yes, but it has also blinded you. It has turned your people into an abstraction, a problem to be solved with edicts and quarantine, rather than a community of living, breathing human beings who are suffering. The isolation, which you once believed was for the good of the kingdom, is now a source of deep, abiding shame. You are the monarch, but you are also a prisoner of your own privilege, and the walls of your palace, once a symbol of power, are now a constant, humiliating reminder of your profound disconnect. The profound disconnect from your people has a new, terrifying consequence as you sit alone in your palace. You are haunted not by the living, but by the dead. The ghosts of past monarchs, your ancestors, begin to loom large in your mind. Their impossible standards and glorious legacies a constant, nagging source of torment. You fear that your reign will be defined not by a triumph, but by this catastrophe, and the failures it has exposed. You find yourself spending hours in the royal gallery, a long hall lined with the portraits of your forebears. You walk from one painted face to the next, their eyes seeming to follow you, to judge you. There is the founder of your dynasty, a warrior king who united the warring tribes and created the kingdom. His gaze is stern and unyielding. There is the great diplomat queen, who forged peace with your neighbors and brought a long era of prosperity. Her expression is one of calm, serene authority. And there is your own father, a man who navigated a difficult political landscape with a deft hand and left you a stable, powerful realm. His eyes, in the portrait, are filled with a quiet confidence you no longer possess. You look at your own reflection in a polished suit of armor standing in the corner of the gallery. You see a face etched with anxiety, a ruler who looks nothing like the confident, powerful figures on the walls. They were great leaders who faced their challenges with courage and grace. You, on the other hand, are a monarch who is hiding in a castle, afraid of a microscopic enemy. The contrast is a psychological blow that is almost unbearable. You feel like a fraud, a pale imitation of the great men and women who came before you. You are a footnote in a glorious history, a king or queen whose reign will be remembered only for a plague. This feeling of inadequacy is a poison, and it begins to seep into every aspect of your life. You remember your father's deathbed words, "The crown is not a gift, my child. It is a burden," and you realize you have failed to live up to that burden. You feel the weight of their expectations, the ghosts of their legacies pressing down on you like a physical force. You wonder what they would have done in your place. Would they have been brave enough to walk among the sick? Would they have found a way to stop the plague? The comparison is always unfavorable, and it leaves you feeling hopeless and utterly alone. An historical detail that you find particularly chilling is the widespread belief in plague texts, or books of prophecies that were thought to foretell the end of a dynasty. These were often filled with obscure symbols and dire warnings. You remember that during a great famine centuries ago, a popular plague text was circulated that spoke of a king who would hide in his castle while his people starved, and that his line would die with him. You now feel a terrible kinship with that king. You are hiding in your castle while your people die, and you wonder if you are a fulfillment of some terrible prophecy. If your reign is not just a period of hardship, but the beginning of the end for your entire dynasty. The weight of legacy is a unique and agonizing psychological torment. Your ancestors' successes are not a comfort, they are a constant reminder of your own perceived failures. You are haunted by the thought that you are not just failing yourself, but your entire family, a chain of command that stretches back for generations. You are the weak link, the one who broke the chain. This sense of profound responsibility, of being the sole guardian of a legacy that you feel you are not worthy of, is a burden that no one can help you with. It is a lonely, terrifying knowledge that sits in the back of your mind, a constant, low-level thrum of fear. This is a long-standing academic debate that echoes your own fears. Historians still debate whether the psychological pressure of living up to a family legacy in times of crisis was a motivating factor for a monarch, or a debilitating burden that led to paralysis and indecision. You feel the truth of both sides. On one hand, the desire to live up to their example gives you the strength to carry on. On the other hand, the constant fear of failure, of being judged by the unblinking eyes of your ancestors, is a paralyzing force. You are a king or queen caught between a glorious past and a terrifying present, and you are terrified that your only contribution to history will be the sound of your own kingdom's demise. The plague, which once felt like an endless, suffocating nightmare, has finally begun to subside. The fever cart bells are ringing less frequently, and the ghostly silence of the streets is slowly being replaced by the tentative sounds of life. But as the pestilence recedes, a new, daunting task emerges: the rebuilding of a kingdom forever scarred by loss and mistrust. This is the silent reckoning, the moment you must face not just the damage the plague has wrought on your people, but the profound psychological changes it has inflicted on you. Their monarch, your first taste of the world outside your palace walls, is a sobering one. You finally venture out, a small retinue of guards and trusted advisors by your side. The city you emerge into is not the one you remember. The vibrant markets are half empty, many of the vendors gone forever. The grand avenues, once bustling with life, now feel wide and hollow. You see the faces of your people, and their expressions are not of joy or relief, but of a deep, abiding weariness. They have survived, but they have not emerged unscathed. Their eyes hold a knowledge of death and suffering that you, from your isolated throne, can never truly understand. The physical rebuilding is a monumental task, but the psychological and emotional rebuilding is even more so. You must now deal with the profound social and economic shifts the plague has caused. Labor is scarce. Families have been shattered, and the social fabric of your kingdom has been torn apart. You hold council meetings to address these issues, but you find that your previous isolation has left you woefully unprepared. Your advisors, many of whom have also lost loved ones, offer counsel that is steeped in a new, grim reality that you can barely comprehend. The old rules of statecraft no longer apply. The kingdom is no longer a chessboard of nobles and peasants. It is a community of grieving, traumatized human beings. This brings to mind a historical detail that has always struck you: the rise of religious extremism and new cults during and after plagues. In times of such profound suffering, people often look for a new kind of meaning, a new kind of salvation. You find yourself grappling with the reports of new sects springing up in the countryside, promising a better world and blaming the old order, your order, for the plague. You realize that your long absence has created a vacuum, and other forces have stepped in to fill it. The loyalty of your people, which was once a given, is now a fragile thing that you must fight to win back. You try to reconnect, to show your people you are with them. You visit the makeshift hospitals and the crowded cemeteries, places you once avoided out of fear, but your presence feels wrong. You are a symbol of power, of a regime that failed to protect them. Your words of comfort sound hollow in your own ears, a distant echo of a royal authority that no longer feels real. The faces of your people, once filled with deference, now hold a mixture of respect and a profound, silent accusation. They look at you, their monarch, and they see a symbol of their suffering. The mistrust you feared from the start has now become a concrete, undeniable reality. This leads to an ongoing academic debate that you now live every day. Historians still debate whether a monarch's attempts to re-engage with their people after a prolonged period of isolation during a pandemic were perceived as a genuine act of reconciliation or a hollow. Self-serving public relations exercise. You feel the weight of this question every time you speak to a grieving family. Every time you walk through the broken streets of your capital, you desperately want to be a source of healing, a symbol of hope. But you fear that you are just a reminder of the darkness. The kingdom is rebuilding, but you feel that you are not a part of it. You are a king or queen on a throne of glass, watching a new world emerge from the ashes of the old, a world that you are no longer sure you belong in. The plague is over. The silence of the grave has given way to the uncertain hum of a world reborn. But for you, the monarch, the end of the pestilence is not an end to the torment. It is the beginning of a silent reckoning, a confrontation with the lasting psychological scars the ordeal has left on your soul. The kingdom may be healing, but you, the king or queen, are left to navigate a new landscape. Not of your realm, but of your own shattered mind. You find yourself in a state of constant, low-level vigilance. The habit of fear has taken deep root. You flinch at a sudden noise, instinctively holding your breath in a crowded room. You still eye your food with suspicion and find yourself washing your hands obsessively. A ritual of a bygone terror. The masks are gone, but you still see them in your mind's eye. A reminder of a time when every face was a potential source of death. The paranoia you cultivated in your isolation has not simply vanished. It has become a part of who you are. A quiet, humming anxiety that sits in the back of your mind. A constant and unwelcome companion. The profound loneliness, too, has left its mark. The walls of your palace, once your gilded cage, are now simply walls. They no longer feel like a sanctuary. They feel like a prison, a symbol of the chasm that now separates you from your people. You are the monarch. Yes, but you are also a person who has spent months in profound isolation, and the habit of being alone is a hard one to break. You find it difficult to connect with others, to trust them, to let down your guard. The emotional walls you built to protect yourself from the plague have become so high and so thick that they now keep out love, friendship, and companionship as well. You are physically free, but emotionally, you are more isolated than ever. An interesting historical detail that you find yourself mulling over is the practice of plague amulets. These were often small, bizarre objects, a dried toad, a piece of parchment with a prayer on it that people would wear around their necks, believing they would ward off the sickness. They were completely useless, of course, but they were a potent psychological tool, a way for people to feel a sense of control in a situation where they had none. You realize now that your own reign has been one long, desperate attempt to create a plague amulet to find some gesture, some decree, some ritual that would give you the illusion of control. And now that the plague is over, you are left with nothing but the bitter knowledge of your own impotence, the burden of your legacy, the silent judgment of your ancestors, is not gone either. The ghosts of the royal gallery still watch you, but now their judgment has a new, terrifying clarity. They judge you not for your failures in a time of plague, but for the person you have become. They judge you for the suspicion in your eyes, the profound loneliness in your soul, the hollow echo of a once great monarch. You are a king or queen who has survived. Yes, but you are not the same. The plague has taken a piece of you that can never be replaced, a part of your humanity, your trust, and your very soul. You have a long reign ahead of you, but you know, deep in your heart, that you will never truly be the monarch your people need, because you are no longer the person you once were. This is a long-standing academic debate that will haunt your reign for as long as you live. Historians still debate whether a monarch who survived a great pandemic was a stronger, more resilient ruler for having faced the crisis, or a fundamentally broken person whose reign was forever colored by the trauma they endured. You feel the weight of this question every time you look in the mirror. You are a survivor, yes, but you are also a victim. The plague may have ended, but its most lasting and brutal psychological toll is a quiet, permanent echo in the empty chambers of your heart. And so, we bring this long, quiet journey to a close. The candles have burned down to their wicks, and the fire in the hearth has dwindled to a few glowing embers. The story of our monarch is over, but the echoes of their fear, their loneliness, their profound sense of loss, they linger in the silence. It's a story not of a glorious triumph over an enemy, but of a quiet, slow motion battle against the demons of the mind, a battle that no one ever truly wins. As you drift off now, I want you to remember that even in the darkest of times, even in the most profound isolation, there's still the faint glow of humanity, the quiet resilience of a spirit that refuses to be extinguished. Sleep now. Let the sounds of the night, the gentle hum of a fan, the soft rhythm of your own breathing soothe you. The story is done. The fear is gone. All that is left is the soft blanket of sleep, waiting to pull you into its comforting embrace. You are safe now. Just close your eyes. Good night.